You know, the biggest lie they tell us old folks is that we need to take it easy, that once you hit 60, it's time to find a soft chair and stay put. But let me tell you, that soft chair is exactly what gets you in trouble. I haven't stepped foot in a gym since 1958, and I certainly don't own any fancy spandex. Yet here I am at 95, feeling stronger than I did 20 years ago. And I owe it all to a little secret I picked up from the other side of the world. It started when I saw a documentary about the elderly people in Okinawa, Japan, and I just couldn't believe my eyes because those folks weren't just surviving, they were thriving in a way that made me feel like I'd been doing it all wrong. While we here in the West are terrified of falling, nearly 40% of us over 65 struggle just to stand up out of a chair, which is a statistic that should scare the living daylights out of you. But over there, I saw grandmothers my age climbing stairs without holding the rail, and grandfathers tending to their gardens with the flexibility of teenagers. It made me realize that the frailty we accept as normal isn't normal at all. It's just a bad habit we've settled into, and the Japanese have found a way out of it using what they call senior secrets, a mix of ancient wisdom and modern science that is downright staggering. The first thing you have to understand, and this is going to sound a bit strange coming from an old lady, is that you actually have two hearts, or at least that's how the Japanese explain it. They talk about the lower legs, specifically the calves, as a second heart because these muscles are responsible for pumping blood back up against gravity to the rest of your body. In America, we ignore our calves unless they cramp up, but in Japan, keeping this second heart strong is the key to longevity. This brings me to the first exercise, and promise me you won't laugh because it is deceptively simple. It's called Kakado Age, which is just a fancy way of saying heel raise. You might think, Rose, how is tiptoeing going to change my life? Well, I thought the same thing until I saw the numbers. The smart folks over at the University of Tokyo, and you know they don't mess around, did a study proving that simply doing these heel raises can increase the strength of your calves by 34%. That is a third stronger just by lifting your heels off the ground. It's the kind of result that sounds unbelievable, but the proof is right there in the pudding, or in this case, in the university research. What I love most about this Japanese method, and why I've stuck with it, is that it doesn't ask you to change your whole life or buy expensive equipment. There is no need for a gym membership or heavy weights that just collect dust in the garage. The Japanese have this wonderful concept of doing things unconsciously, weaving the movement into your day so you don't even realize you're exercising. For example, a Japanese housewife doesn't stop her day to do calf raises. She does them while she's standing at the stove cooking dinner. A businessman does them while he's waiting on the platform for his train. So that's what I started doing. When I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I'm up and down on my toes, pumping that second heart. When I'm waiting for the kettle to boil for my afternoon tea, I'm doing my Kakado Age. It turns those little wasted moments of the day into a health tonic, and let me tell you, it completely changes how your legs feel. You stop feeling heavy and sluggish, and you start feeling a bounce in your step that you haven't felt in decades. But we can't just stop at the calves because a house is only as strong as its foundation, and for us humans, that foundation is the hips. This is where things get a little more interesting and where we have to borrow a move from the sumo wrestlers. Yes, those big fellas in the ring. They do a movement called moashi, which is a hip rotation that looks a bit funny if you catch your reflection in the mirror, but it is essential for keeping your balance. We are so used to walking in straight lines, forward to the fridge, backward to the couch, that our hips forget how to rotate, and that stiffness is what makes us wobble. The Moashi greases up those hip joints and opens them up, giving you the kind of stability that prevents falls before they happen. It's another piece of that ancient wisdom that fits perfectly with what doctors are telling us today about fall prevention. Now, getting your calves and hips moving is a good start, but if you really want to double your leg strength, we have to talk about the one movement that most Western doctors tell us to avoid, which is a crying shame. I'm talking about the squat, or what the Japanese call shagamu. Over here, if you complain about your knees, the doctor says don't squat. But in Japan, they know that squatting is actually the secret to keeping your knees and hips young. You see folks in Okinawa squatting down to pull weeds or chat with a neighbor, and they pop back up like it's nothing. That's because they never stop doing it. Shagamu isn't just an exercise. It's a way of life that keeps the joints lubricated and the muscles engaged through their full range of motion. It goes against everything I was told, but once I started practicing it gently, holding on to my kitchen sink for support at first, I realized that my knees didn't need rest. They needed to be used. Now hold on to your hats, because if you thought the squat was radical, what I'm about to tell you next is going to sound too simple to be true, but it is the absolute gold standard of this entire Japanese routine. They call it tachi-swari, which translates to something as mundane as standing up and sitting down. And when I first heard it, I almost laughed out loud because I thought, Rose, you've been doing that your whole life. But that's exactly the point. We've been doing it, but we haven't been using it. This exercise is the bread and butter of independence, and it targets the quadriceps, those big muscles on the front of your thighs that are basically the engines that carry you through life. I read a report from the University of Kyoto that nearly made me drop my knitting needles. These researchers found that performing this specific repetitive movement of standing up and sitting down could increase the strength of those thigh muscles by a staggering 89%. Just let that sink in for a minute. Nearly double the strength just by getting up out of your chair and sitting back down with intention. It makes you wonder why on earth we are paying hundreds of dollars for personal trainers when the best piece of exercise equipment is the armchair we are sitting in right now. The magic of tachi-swari isn't just in the movement itself, but in how it completely rewrites that scary statistic I told you about earlier, the one about 40% of us Westerners struggling to get up. The Japanese treat this movement like a religion. They don't use their hands to push off the armrests, and they don't flop down like a sack of potatoes. They control the descent, fighting gravity all the way down, and then they power up using nothing but their legs, and that control is what builds that ironclad strength. I started doing this while watching my evening game shows. Every time a commercial comes on, I stand up and sit down, stand up and sit down. I don't need a gym card. I don't need to drive anywhere. And nobody is watching me to see if my hair is messy. It's done right there in the privacy of my living room, turning my TV time into a workout session without me even breaking a sweat. It's what those clever Japanese folks call unconscious exercise, meaning you fit it into the cracks of your day until it becomes as natural as breathing. This brings me to another thing that really separates the Japanese way from how we do things here in the States. They don't believe in exercise snacking versus exercise binging. You know how we act. We do nothing all week and then try to kill ourselves in a Zumba class on Saturday, which usually just ends up with us hurting our backs. The Japanese method is more like snacking. They take little bites of movement throughout the day. A few heel raises, Kakado age, while brushing teeth, a deep squat, shagamu, while pulling a weed in the garden, and some tachi-swari while waiting for the news to start. It's brilliant because it removes the mental hurdle. You never have to get ready to work out because the world is your gym. This approach keeps the foundation of the house. That's what they call our hips and legs, constantly reinforced. If you treat your body like a house that needs constant small repairs, it will never fall down. But if you ignore it for years and then try to fix everything in a weekend, well, that's when the roof caves in. I have to tell you, adopting this mindset has done more than just strengthen my legs. It has completely changed my confidence. There is a specific kind of fear that comes with aging in America, a quiet terror that one day you will sit down and not be able to get back up. And that fear makes you move less, which only makes you weaker. But when you practice Tachiswari and you feel those thigh muscles getting rock hard, that fear evaporates. You realize that you are in control. It's not just about increasing quadricep strength by 89%, as the scientists say. It's about knowing that if you fall, you have the power to pick yourself back up. It's about walking into a room and not scanning for the nearest chair because you know your legs can support you for as long as you want. That is the kind of freedom that no amount of money can buy. And to think it all comes from simply mimicking the movements of sumo wrestlers and Okinawan grandmothers is just delightful. Let's circle back to that idea of the second heart in the calves for a moment because it connects to all of this. When you are doing your sit-to-stands and your squats, you aren't just building muscle, you are pumping blood. The Japanese understand that the body is an interconnected system, not just a collection of parts. When those calf muscles contract during Kakado age, they send fresh oxygenated blood up to your brain and your heart, which is probably why those seniors in the videos I saw looked so sharp and alert. They aren't fighting the fog of old age because they are keeping their engines running. In the West, we treat the body like a car that we park in the garage once we hit 60, but the Japanese drive it every single day. They know that a parked car rusts out a lot faster than one that's on the road. So every time I do a heel raise or a squat, I imagine I'm revving the engine, reminding my body that we have a lot more miles to go. Now, if you step back and look at the whole picture I've been painting for you, you'll see that this isn't really about counting reps or sweating through a headband. It's about a completely different way of living. When you put all these pieces together, the heel raises for that second heart, the sumo rotations for your hips, and that golden ticket of standing up and sitting down, you realize the Japanese aren't working out the way we think of it. They are simply living in a way that keeps the machine oiled. Over here, we tend to treat our bodies like old cars that we're afraid to drive, leaving them in the garage until the battery dies and the tires go flat. But the secret I've learned is that the body is the only machine that actually works better and lasts longer the more you use it. The senior secrets show us that we don't need to be afraid of our own movement. We need to embrace it, whether we are waiting for a bus or just boiling water for tea. What tickles me the most about this whole philosophy is how it strips away every single excuse we like to make. You know the ones I'm talking about. I can't afford a gym membership, or I don't have the room for a treadmill, or I'm too old to learn new tricks. Well, honey, that's all hogwash. These exercises don't cost a single penny. You don't need a membership card, you don't need special shoes, and you certainly don't need to drive anywhere. The Japanese have proven that the best gym in the world is your own living room floor. And the most effective equipment is your own body weight. By making these movements unconscious habits, just little things you do without thinking, you remove the friction. It's not a chore anymore, it's just life. And that is how you beat the odds. You don't do it by being a weekend warrior. You do it by being consistent, just like the steady drip of water that wears down a stone. I want you to remember those numbers I told you, because sometimes our brains need a little convincing even when our hearts are ready. Remember that the University of Tokyo proved a 34% increase in calf strength just from those little heel raises. Remember that the University of Kyoto found an 89% boost in thigh power just from standing up and sitting down properly. These aren't just numbers on a page. They are the difference between needing a walker and walking on your own 2 feet. When I look at the statistics saying 40% of people over 65 struggle to get out of a chair, it breaks my heart because I know now that it doesn't have to be that way. We have the tools right here, passed down from generations of wise folks in Okinawa who figured out that the secret to a long life is a strong pair of legs. So here is my challenge to you. From one spring chicken to another, don't wait until Monday. Don't wait until New Year's. Start right now while you're reading this. Wiggle those toes, rotate those hips, and stand up from your chair with a little bit of purpose. Treat your hips like the foundation of your house, because you wouldn't let your house crumble, would you? Treat your calves like a second heart, giving them the love and attention they deserve. The results might seem shocking or unbelievable to the doctors who expect us to decline, but to us, it'll just feel like reclaiming what was ours all along. If a 95-year-old lady can double her leg strength and dance in her garden, then, sweetheart, there is absolutely nothing stopping you. The fountain of youth isn't a magical water source. It's the strength in your own legs. So go ahead and use them.